Welcome, everybody. Thank you all for joining us. We are with Orthodox Christians for Palestine, and this is our speaker series, Faith is Action, Conversations on Palestine. We have about an hour and a half for this session. Professor Negib Geahchan will be speaking for close to an hour, and then we'll have about 30 minutes for questions during the Q&A discussion. Before we begin and before we introduce our esteemed speaker, we just wanted to give you a little bit of background about our movement and about this speaker series, in case you aren't familiar with it and this is your first time joining us. So who are we? What is Orthodox Christians for Palestine? Orthodox Christians for Palestine is a non-political humanitarian movement started started by parishioners in the DMV area who advocate for people in Palestine, regardless of religious affiliation. OCP, Orthodox Christians for Palestine, believes that the voice and actions of the Orthodox Church are essential to lasting and genuine peace. And the purpose of this speaker series is to center the Orthodox Christian witness in conversations about justice and peace in Palestine. The Orthodox Church is, after all, the indigenous Christian presence of Palestine and the surrounding region, rooted in the very land where Christ was born, lived, crucified, and rose from the dead, where the Church itself began. For generations, Western colonial history, missionary movements, and political theology have shaped how the Holy Land is understood, often sidelining the voices of local Orthodox Christians and viewing them through an Orientalist lens. So this speaker and discussion series aims to foreground the Orthodox Church as the indigenous Christian presence of Palestine and the region. It focuses how the Orthodox tradition can offer depth and steadiness to the movement for justice in Palestine. I wanted to just also mention before we turn it to our speaker that we do have, this is a monthly speaker series. And so this month, of course, is our guest today. And next month, we have Professor Dr. Michel Abbas, who is the General Secretary of the Middle East Council of Churches, who will be speaking on the work of the churches on the ground in the Levant. And then in June, we have trauma therapists and coaches who are Orthodox and speak from the Orthodox perspective. And the title of their talk will be From Despairing to Witness Bearing, Stewarding Compassion Amid the Global News Cycle. So kind of helping those of us, especially in the diaspora, who are witnessing the trauma of what's happening to our homelands, and sort of how do we hold that and kind of get through it, given how difficult it is to witness, and how can we do that from an Orthodox perspective. And then we have another wonderful guest. I think I just saw him join us today too, Ashraf Shaheen, who is a tour guide in the Holy Land, and he will be speaking on the living stones in the Holy Land, past, present, and future challenges for Orthodox Christians in the Holy Land. So now, I guess I'll just tell you the way we're going to kind of coordinate this talk is we will be recording it, as you heard in the very beginning. We are recording the talk, and we will record the Q&A portion, but we will not post the Q&A portion to the public on our YouTube channel. We will just post Dr. Geahchan's talk. So please, feel free to share your questions openly at the end. We won't be including your face and voice. We may cut little segments of the Q&A, but we won't include your voice to the public, just for privacy and protection. And during the Q&A, please feel free at any time, actually, before the Q&A session, to put questions in the chat, and we'll come to them when there's time at the end. Or at the very end, you're welcome to just raise your hand using the Zoom feature, and then we'll call on you for the Q&A. And of course, try to keep your questions concise so we have time to include everybody in the discussion. And with that, I'll turn it over to Salim to introduce our speaker today. Salim, are you able to unmute yourself?
I just did, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Good morning, everybody. Let's start with a prayer. The choice of this prayer is related to the Theotokos and Constantinople, both of which were central to the Romaioi. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, now and ever, and unto ages of ages. Amen. To thee, the champion. To thee, the champion leader, do I offer thanks of victory, O Theotokos, thou who hast delivered me from terror, but as thou hast that power which is invincible, O thou who art the bride without bridegroom, deliver me from all dangers, that I might cry unto thee, Hail, O bride without bridegroom. Orthodox Christians for Palestine, as our name implies, is focused on Palestine and the unfolding crimes taking place there. Anna just gave us an introduction and a summary of what we do. As part of our activities, we were running this series, including on Christian Zionism. For this month, though, we're doing something a bit different. Our webinar today is on the history and culture of what is commonly known as Byzantium, or Rum as known in Arabic and Romaioi in Greek. The term Rum now denotes the Orthodox Church in the Levant, but for hundreds of years, it was also the culture of the Mediterranean basin. One way to learn about a subject matter such as ours of today is to start by asking a few questions. I'll start with a couple. As just mentioned, the term Rum now in the Levant refers to the Orthodox faith. How did the term that covered a civilization now only refers to the faith? Ethnicity and nationalism are major cultural factors in our lives now. We do know the Hellenists that preceded the Romans and Romaioi valued body, beauty, health, and mind, and held the adage, if you think like us, you're one of us, i.e., no regard to ethnicity. How did the Romaioi handle different ethnicities in their midst, different languages, different religions? Allow us an hour to take an excursion into history of the Romaioi culture so we may draw better lessons for our times. Professor Geahchan, Negib Geahchan, is a medical doctor. He's president of the Romanian Cultural Society in Beirut, Lebanon. He's the author of 2 books dealing with the subject of the Romanian presence in the Levant, My Sun Shall Never Not Fade, and A Candle Enlightening Our Home. Professionally, he is a physician specializing in general surgery and surgical oncology. He's a graduate of St. Joseph University in Lebanon, the Paris University in France, and Gustave Roussy Institute as well in France. He's a fellow of the European Board of Surgery, a surgeon at Mount Lebanon Hospital and St. Charles Hospital. He is a professor of general surgery at Balaman University, Lebanon, a former associate dean, faculty of medicine, St. Joseph University, and a former chairman of the Department of Oncology and Public Health. He's a former medical director, Hôtel Dieu de France University Hospital in Beirut and St. George University Hospital. Past president of the Lebanese Society of General Surgery twice, and a past member of the administrative board of the Beirut Governmental University Hospital. He's the former chairman of the Department of Surgery, University of Balaman, Mount Lebanon University Hospital. He's the recipient of the Golden Hand Award from the Lebanese Society for General Surgery. He's also the author of 25 indexed publications and a large number of scientific publications in non-indexed journals. Welcome, Professor Geahchan. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, good afternoon. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers of this Zoom meeting, and especially Mr. Aboud and all of you. Also, it is my pleasure to welcome all the participants who registered and hope that this will enrich the Romanian culture and heritage. My lecture covers the successive eras of the Romanian history and heritage and will focus on hot issues that challenge our civilization. Well, the subject, can you see my, do you see my presentation, my slides?
Yes,
do you see
we
them?
do.
Okay.
Yes, thank
Okay, fine.
you. Yes.
The exact title of my lecture is The Romaians of the Levant, the Rum, or Romaioi in Greek, Historical Periods and Cultural Heritage. I am speaking from Beirut, as you know. It is a major city in the Levant and capital answer some questions that are, what is the Levant? There are 7 or 8 questions. What is the Levant? Who were the inhabitants of the Levant before 634 AD? How the Romaioi became Christians? How the Romaioi became of Greek culture? The great historical periods of the Romaian civilization, the Levant under Islam between 634 AD and 1920 AD, and finally, how to raise awareness about the conditions of the Levantine Romaioi. In the first part of my lecture, I will answer the question, what is the Levant? Etymologically, this word comes from the Latin verb levare, which means to raise, referring to the sun rising in the east. It is similar to the Arabic term al-Mashriq. It includes several modern countries, mainly Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Israel, Palestine, Cyprus, the Turkish province of Hatay, it means Antioch, and Eastern Turkey. The concept of the Levant is very old. It dates back to the Roman Empire, in which the eastern part was called the Dioceses Orientis until the 4th century. Well, as you know, the Roman Empire included many provinces, as you see in this map. You have in the west Spain, Gaul, Italy, Dacia, etc., Greece, Macedonia, etc. And you have in the east an area which is called the East, province of the East, or the Orient's province in Latin. And it includes the countries that I have cited. It means Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Palestine, Israel, Cyprus, and some parts of the present state of Turkey. The Diocese of the Orient gave birth to a Christian patriarchate of Antioch, which means our patriarchate now is called the Patriarchate of Antioch, and it started in the early centuries of Christianity, and this patriarchate was split in 451 in the Council of in the Council of 451, it was split into 2 patriarchates, the Patriarchate of Antioch and the Patriarchate of Jerusalem. And you see on this map the different areas or provinces of this patriarchate, the initial one, the primary one. This is here the capital, the great city, the divine city that was called God's city of Antioch, the capital. You have here the island of Cyprus, and you have this part is called Phoenicia, which is now Lebanon. And Phoenicia was at that time divided into 2 areas, the Phoenicia Maritima, which is Lebanon, the present Lebanon, and Phoenicia Libanesis, which is the interior part, the eastern Lebanon and Damascus and the area of Damascus. Syria was here, the north, where the area was called Syria. There was Syria 1 and Syria 2. And you have here the area of Cilicia or Cilicia, and here you have the Mesopotamia. And this was the frontier, the border of the Roman Empire in the first centuries. And you have down here 3 areas called Palestina 1, Palestina 2, and Palestina 3, englobing the Sinai Peninsula. This was one province in the Roman Empire, and now it corresponds to 2 patriarchates, the Patriarchate of Antioch, the capital is here, and the Patriarchate of here, Jerusalem, which the capital is here. The patriarchs of Antioch and Jerusalem have specific phemi. What is a phemi? Phemi is a solemn liturgical acclamation chanted in the Orthodox Church to honor a presiding bishop or patriarch. The theme for the Patriarch of Antioch is the following. For example, the present Patriarch is called John. And John, when in the theme we say, John, the most holy and blessed Father, chosen by God as Patriarch of the great city of God, Antioch, Syria, Cilicia, Arabia, Phoenicia, which means Lebanon, Georgia, which means the eastern part of Anatolia or of Turkey, Mesopotamia, and all the east. Many years to him is translated in English, or as it's said in Greek, Ispolaeti Despota. The female of the Patriarch of Jerusalem, who is now Theophilus, is the most holy and beatific Father, chosen by God as Patriarch of the holy city of Jerusalem and all Palestine, Syria, Arabia, Transjordan, of Galilee, and Holy Zion, Ispolaeti Despota. This is the female of the Patriarch of Jerusalem. So these are the two constituents of the Levant. Now the second part of my speech will be about who were the inhabitants of the Levant before 634. We will learn later on why this date is very important. 634 AD is a very important date. Well, the cause is that Muslims started invading the Levant in 634. Before 634, all the area or the Levant was part of the Roman Empire. Damascus was conquered by the Muslims in 635. Then there was a famous battle called the Battle of Yarmouk between the Romans and the Arabs. It finished by a decisive victory for Arabs in 636. And finally, Jerusalem, the capital of the Patriarchate of the Holy Land, surrendered in 638. Prior to this invasion, the great majority of the population of the Levant was Roman and Christian. And this is very important. The indigenous population of all the area that I am describing was Roman and Christian. These Roman inhabitants of the Levant are called Rum in Arabic and in Turkish. The word Rum is let's say, a deformation of the Greek word Romaioi. Romaioi is the plural of Romaios. Romaios means one Rumi, and Romaioi is the plural. Why are they called Romaioi? Their name is derived from the name of the capital of the Roman Empire. When we say someone is a Rumi, it means he is a citizen of the Roman Empire. This is exactly the significance of the word Rumi. Initially, the capital of the Roman Empire was the city of Rome, that you know very well, situated in Italy. But since the year 330 AD, the capital of the Roman Empire became Nova Roma or Nea Romi, which has been called like this exactly. This is the official name of the city, Nova Roma in Latin or Nea Romi in Greek. But well, it was called after that, after the death of Constantine the Great, was called Constantinople, but Constantinople never was the official name of the city. The city has an official name, Nova Roma, and that's why we continue to consider ourselves Romans or citizens of the Roman Empire, whose capital is Nova Roma or Constantinople. The present Romaioi of the Levant are the heirs of the ancient Roman Empire, then of the Romanian Empire after the year 330. This Romanian Empire, as we call it, Romanian Empire, is wrongly and deceitfully termed Byzantine or Byzantine by the Protestant German Hieronymus Wolff in the 16th century. Why did this one and the West have chosen the name Byzantine to replace the word Roman for the Eastern Christians? For two reasons. Because they wanted first to, because Byzantium, well, we are refusing to use the name Byzantine, and we should not use the term Byzantine to speak about the Eastern Roman citizens or the Eastern Empire, because Byzantium was never a Christian capital, and its name was never Nova Roma. It was not Nova Roma. It was an ancient small city, Greek city, in the same place of Constantinople, of Nova Roma, but it was not a Christian city, and it was never a capital. The second reason is that the Catholic and Protestant West tried constantly to deny the universal Roman character of the Orthodox Church, trying to show it as a limited national or ethnic church. This is the reason why they don't want to call us Romans, and they prefer to give us another name, and they have chosen the name Byzantine, which is completely wrong, and we should not use it, but we are using now a word Romaian instead of Byzantine. The word Romaian, or this adjective, is coming from the Greek name Romaioi, with an adjective Romaian. The Romaioi were mentioned in the Quran. Those who read Arabic, from you who read Arabic, can see the surah. This is the surah of the Quran, and it is written in Arabic, and this surah speaks about the Romans. And in the translation of this surah, we can read, the Romans have been defeated. Exactly, this surah says, the Romans have been defeated in a nearby land, yet following their defeat, they will triumph within some years. The whole matter rests with Allah before and after victory. And on that day, the believers, it means the Arabs, the Muslims, the believers will rejoice the victory willed by Allah, which means the victory of the Romans. He gives victory to whoever he wills, for he is the Almighty, most merciful. This is the promise of Allah, and Allah never fails in his promise, but most people do not know. Why this surah was written in the Quran? It was written before 634, the occupation of the Levant. It was written because there was a very important war between the Romaioi and the Persians between 602 and 628. In the first period of this war, the Persians were victorious, and this surah says that the Romans or the Romaioi will be victorious after that. And that's what happened exactly. The Levant was an integral part, as I said, of the Roman Empire in antiquity. For example, in the year 117 AD, the Roman Empire was at its territorial peak, and you see it is all around the Mediterranean Sea, and the Mediterranean Sea was called, even by the Arabs, the Roman Sea, Bahr al-Rum, Roman Sea. It was called like this until very recently. The Levant was an integral part of this Roman Empire, and in 212 AD, Emperor Caracalla, who was then at the time the empire was still pagan, Emperor Caracalla, through the Constitutio Antoniana, often known as the Edict of Caracalla, granted Roman citizenship to all free men and women throughout the empire. So our Levantine population, it means the Roman population of the Levant, became all Roman citizens in 212. And so we continue to consider ourselves as Roman citizens since 212. In 330 AD, Emperor Constantine the Great transferred the capital from Rome to its new placement on the Bosporus and called it Nova Roma, Nea Romi, as I said earlier. Constantinople became the capital of Christendom, and progressively the Roman Empire in totality became a Christian state. We call this renovated Christian state the Romaian Empire, name inspired from the Greek, as I said, the Romaioi, instead of the wrongly and deceitfully Byzantine Empire, to distinguish it from the precedent pagan Roman Empire. So before 330, we call it Roman Empire. After 330, when the capital was transferred to Constantinople, to Nova Roma, we call it by the Greek origin of the word Romaian Empire, and not Byzantine Empire. The name Romaian Empire applies more specifically to the eastern part of the Roman Empire after the division of the empire into an eastern state and a western state by the Emperor Theodosius the Great in 395 AD. In 395 AD, the Emperor Theodosius divided the empire into two parts, one for his son Arcadius and the second for his son Honorius. The western part of the empire, with its capital eventually moving from Rome to cities like Milano and Ravenna, collapsed definitely in 476. There was no more Roman Empire, of initial Roman Empire or original Roman Empire in the West after 476, because of the German invasions. What caused the collapse of the Western Empire were the German invasions, the Goths, the Franks, the Vandals, the Saxons, etc. It regenerated in the year 800 AD as a German empire. It was called also a Roman Empire, but really it was a German empire headed by Charlemagne, whose name in Latin is Carolus Magnus. As you know probably Charlemagne. And since that year, 800, the development of the West constituted a new state and the new West that we know at present. This is the division of the Roman Empire into an eastern part and a western part. And we are speaking of the eastern part. This eastern part continued to be called the Roman Empire until 1453, the date of the occupation of Constantinople by the Ottomans. Progressively, after 330, the Romaian Empire, which means the Eastern Empire, became increasingly Christian and culturally Greek. Before 330, you will see that this population, the Roman population of the empire, of the whole empire and of the East in particular, were not culturally Greek in toto and completely Christian. So how the Romaioi became Christians is the third question. Christianity started in Jerusalem after Jesus' resurrection and ascension, as you know. The disciples were invited by Jesus to convert all nations. And you see this in Matthew 28. It is written, and Jesus approached them and spoke to them, saying, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, not of the Jewish nation only, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to keep everything, whatever things I have commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the ages. However, the disciples did not understand exactly this, and it was not easy to go and preach Christianity to all nations. The disciples, who were all, at the origin, all were Jews, went to convert primarily to Jews in the Holy Land and the different Roman provinces. The conversion of Romans, who were called the Gentiles, started mainly in Antioch, the capital of the Levant. For it is written in the Acts of the Apostles, chapter 11, for a whole year, they, Barnabas and Saul means Paul. His first name, his Hebrew name is Saul, met with the church and taught a large number of people. And it was in Antioch that the disciples were first called Christians. So the first time the name Christian or the word Christian was used was in Antioch itself. Saul of Tarsus, or St. Paul, who was a Jew of the diaspora, started a large scale of conversions of the Gentiles. So it started the preaching and the diffusion of Christianity in all the nations started with St. Paul. He started a large scale of conversions of the Gentiles and made 3 major journeys in the eastern parts of the Roman Empire. These are the 3 journeys of St. Paul. The first one up in the left, and he went for here. The first time he went from Antioch to the eastern part of Anatolia, to this area here, and to the different cities. And all this is described very, very well in the Acts of the Apostles. The second trip is this one. He went to Asia Minor and to Greece. And in the third one, he went also to the Asia Minor, to other places in Asia Minor and in Greece. St. Paul was not often on good terms with the disciples because he wanted to convert the Gentiles. Then there was a continuous tension between the converted Jews and the converted Gentiles. And I think this subject is very, very interesting in case you want to study and to speak about the Christian Zionism, because this confrontation is very, very old, and it started with the disciples and with St. Paul. It is written like this also in the Holy Book. It is written, when Paul arrived in Jerusalem, he tried to join the disciples, but they were all afraid of him, not believing that he was a disciple. Then Barnabas took charge of him and brought him to the apostles, and he reported to them how on the way he had seen the Lord and that he had spoken to him. This was on his road to his journey to Damascus, and how in Damascus he had spoken out boldly in the name of Jesus. He also spoke and debated with the Hellenists, and I'm signaling this. It's very important. He started to speak with the Hellenists. It means with people who were not Jews, but they tried to kill him. And when the brothers learned of this, they took him down to Caesarea and sent him on his way to Tarsus. Tarsus is his city, is his personal city, original city. St. Paul was not often in good terms with the disciples, as I said before, and it is written, there is neither Jew, and he was convinced of his policy, of what he was doing, and he is one of the founders of our Christianity, of our present Christianity, because he writes, there is neither Jews nor Gentile, neither slave nor free, nor is there male and female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. If you belong to Christ, then you are Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. Because of this conflict, the apostles met, because of the conflict between the disciples, the majority of the disciples on one side and Paul on the other side, there was a council in Jerusalem, council in Jerusalem between the years 48 to 50 AD, presided by James, who is called the brother of the Lord, and they decided, which was a very important decision, decided that Gentile converts did not need to follow the laws of Moses, specifically circumcision, and to be saved. They don't need this to be saved. And the decision concerned not only circumcision, but also what we have, what they can eat, what are the obligations, the Jewish obligations they have to respect, etc. It was a compromise. It was the decision of this council in Jerusalem was a kind of compromise between Paul and the others. And since that time, it became possible for a Gentile, for a non-Jew, to become a Christian. So in the first centuries, this is very important, in the first centuries, the conversion to the Christian faith concerned mainly the Jews of the diaspora and partially the Roman Gentiles. Christianity spread in the Jewish diaspora during the three first centuries. Christianity spread mainly in the Jewish diaspora and in some major cities, but reached only 10 to 20% of the Roman population by the beginning of the 4th century. So the Roman Empire did not become a Christian in the first 3 centuries. It means 300 years. It was mainly concentrated in some cities like Antioch, like Alexandria in Egypt, and mainly in the Jewish population who became Christian. And this is in the year 313 when Constantine published his Edict of Milan. This was the situation of the Roman Empire. And you see here in dark blue the areas where there were Christians. There was only 10 to 20% of the population who was Christian. And the other population, 80 to 90%, were still pagan and not Christian. So it was very, very important. Now, what happened after that? Constantine in the year 313 published what is called the Edict of Milan, giving the liberty of religion in the Roman Empire, and he was later converted to Christianity, himself converted to Christianity. He changed the course of history and gave a great boost to the expansion of Christianity. He constructed Nea Roma, as I said earlier, and he called for the first ecumenical concile. Emperor Theodosius I, who came later on at the end of the 4th century, issued another edict called the Edict of Thessalonica in Greece in 380 AD, by which Christianity became the official religion of the Roman Empire and the mandatory religion for all Roman citizens. This is very important. So starting by the end of the 4th century, the Roman Empire was supposed to be completely, entirely Christian. Now, how the Romaioi became Greek culture, this is my fourth question, topic. The Romaioi of the Levant, it means the citizens of Rome in the Levant, were in the first centuries the indigenous population of Phoenicia, Palestine, and Syria. These were Romaioi because they were citizens of the Roman Empire. They were the old Phoenicians, called also Canaanites. In the Semitic languages, they are called Canaanites, but for the Greeks, they are called Phoenicians. They were Hebrews, Nabateans. Nabateans are populations of the Jordan, of the present state of Jordan. Arameans, population of Syria, who mixed very early with the peoples of Cyprus, the Aegean islands, and the Greek continent, and later on with different migrations from Asia Minor. So there was a kind of mixture, very old mixture between these populations, local indigenous populations, with the Greek populations of Cyprus, Asian islands, and the Greek continent. They started to be culturally Hellenized since the creation of the empire of Alexander the Great in the year 333 BC, 3 centuries before Jesus Christ, which included the eastern part of the Mediterranean basin. This is the empire of Alexander the Great at its entire expansion. It reached India, reached some areas closely to China, and you have Iran and Egypt and the Levant, the Anatolia, it means Turkey, and Greece and the Balkan. It was a very important empire built by Alexander the Great in the year 333 BC. The historical capital city of the Levant was Antioch. It was created, this city was built by one of the generals of Alexander the Great, called Seleucus Nicator, in the year 300 BC. Since that time, Antioch became the largest city in the Levant. And Antioch remains still now the seat of the third patriarchate of the Romaian Orthodox Church after Constantinople and Alexandria. So you see the importance of these historical events. The creation of Antioch in the year 300 BC continues until now, is inherited until now by the patriarchate, by the Orthodox patriarchate of the Levant, which means the patriarchate of Antioch. The Seleucid kingdom, which means the higher of this empire, is the higher of the empire of Alexander the Great. This kingdom was of Greek culture. It regressed geographically and progressively until the Roman extension and invasion in 64 BC. So this Greek empire remained in the area until the year 64, between the year 333 before Jesus until the year 64 BC before Jesus, about 300 years, and everything became Greek in the area. So Greek language, Greek culture, all this was introduced by this kingdom. Antioch remained the capital of the Orient province all through this time. Under the Seleucid dynasty, the Greek language became the official and demotic language of the Levantine people, mainly in the western provinces of the kingdom, nowadays Lebanon, Palestine, and western Syria. Almost all the major cities of the Levant that you know, and you know them now by Arabic names, these cities hold Greek names. I am going to cite some of them. Ptolemais, it means Akka. Tyros, it means Tyre, Sur. Sarepta, it means Sarafand. Sidonis, it means Saida. Porphyrion means Gii. Berytos means Beirut. Byblos means Jbel. Botris, Batroun. Tripoli, Tablos. Orthosias, in a small, it had completely disappeared. It is between Tripoli and Akkar. Arcadia is Arqa. Antarados is Tartus. Arados is Arwad. Heliopolis is Baalbek. Panias is Banias. Caesarea is still Caesarea, and it is a dead city, and Xenopolis, etc. These names have been partially Arabized or replaced by Arab names after 634. In 64 BC, the Levant became a province of the Roman Empire, and all inhabitants became citizens of the Roman Empire, as I said earlier, in 212 AC. But the language used in the country by the Roman state, even after the Roman occupation, the language used in the country and by the population remained the Greek language. Latin did not replace the Greek language in the East. And the famous proof of the importance of the Greek language is that the New Testament in its totality was conceived in the Levant under Roman occupation, but it was completely written in Greek, as you know. Since the 4th century, it means after Constantine the Great, the population of the Levant and of all the Roman Empire became entirely Christian, as I have explained earlier. It is the legacy of the Roman emperors, Constantine the Great and Justinian the Great, who did a very important work to make this entire empire Christian and later of Greek culture also. They used the Greek as their demotic and liturgical language and were steeped in Greco-Roman culture. When we are speaking now of the Levant, you see in red on this map the Eastern Empire, or the Romaian, what we call the Romaian Empire, and we are concerned by the circle you have here. It shows the Levant. What is the Levant? And we are speaking of this Levant in the year 476, for example. It was like this. And these are the divisions that I have explained earlier, the different provinces of the Orient, or the Levant. Now the fifth question. What are the great historical periods of the Romaian civilization, which I repeat is wrongly called Byzantine civilization? These are the great historical periods. We can divide the history of the Romaian civilization, not of the Romaian Empire, but the Romaian civilization. It means until now, until now. First one, the consecration of Constantinople and the transition to Christianity by Constantinian and Theodosian dynasties between the year 330 and 451. The first golden era, where the most important emperors were Justinian and Maurice between 451 and 602. Now, what is on this table, what is in bold, means that we are, as Romaioi of the Levant, we are concerned. We were living in the empire and were concerned by the empire in these periods. When for the divisions or the periods that are not in bold, it means that we were outside the empire. The third part is addressing external threats and internal division, 602, 717. This is the period where the Arabs and the Muslims attacked the Roman Empire. And for addressing the causes of military collapse between 717 and 867. And during this period, we had a very important internal war, let's say, in the Romaian Empire and the Romaian civilization. It was the iconoclasm. It was the war against icons. Now, in the second golden era, it's a very important era, which is maybe called the Romaian Renaissance, between 867 and 1056. And in this area, the Romaian Empire, the Romaian army returned to the Levant, and part of the Levant was occupied again by the Romans. Then we had a struggle between 56 and 1204. Then came the Crusaders, and it was a very, very bad period. Crusader occupation of Constantinople between 1204 and 1261. 8, we have the struggle for survival by the Paleologan era, by the Palaiologos family dynasty between 1261 until 1453 is the date of the occupation of Constantinople and the destruction of the empire. After that time, we still have 4 eras until now. The rise of Russia and the Ottoman millet system, under which the Roman of the East, of the Levant, and even of the Balkan and of Greece were all under the Ottoman Empire rule between 1453 and 1820. After the 1820 started to be built the new states in the Balkan, which was an era of nationalism and ethnic divisions in the Romanian world. It's really in this period we had the new states, we had liberty for the Romaioi in the different countries of Eastern Europe, but it was also, and very badly, a period of ethnic divisions and even of wars between these nations, between 1820 and 1970. Then badly, in the 11th period, the communism, the atheism, and the fragmentation of the Romanian world, by immigration and alienation between 1917 and 1920. It was the Bolshevik Revolution, the communism in the Eastern Europe, etc. And finally, there is the contemporary era, since 1990, after the fall of the Soviet Union and of communism in Europe. Well, in all these, what is very important in the Romaian civilization is to know that one of the major accomplishments of the Romaioi is Orthodox Christianity. Before 330 or 325, let's say exactly, there was no really an Orthodox Christianity. There was Christianity, Christians, but the people was Christian, but the Orthodox Christianity as we know it was not yet present. It was structured and perfected by the Romaioi, by the Romans of the East, because they held 7 ecumenical councils and they were held in and around the capital. As you see here, the capital is Constantinople, and these are the cities where the councils took place. This is the list of the councils. Nicaea in 325, which was a very important one. It condemned Arianism, which taught that Christ was a created being, and published the Credo. The first Council of Constantinople, 381, completed the Nicene Creed. Credo is creed, affirming the divinity of the Holy Spirit. The Council of Ephesus, 431, condemned Nestorianism, affirmed that Mary is the Theotokos, and that Christ is one person, not 2 separate natures joined together. This one is very, very important. Council of Chalcedon, 451. I will speak of it later. It condemned the monophysitism. Then a second Council of Constantinople in 553 reaffirmed the decisions of the first 4 councils. Another one important for us in the East and in Lebanon in particular, the Third Council of Constantinople in 680-681, it condemned monothelitism. I will speak of monothelitism later on, affirming that Christ has 2 wills, divine. The council decided that Christ has 2 wills, divine and the human, working in harmony. And finally, a second Council of Nicaea restored the veneration of icons, breaking the iconoclast heresy and affirmed their theological role in the Orthodox worship. Well, what is very important to know, as you see, the cities where the meetings took place were Nicaea, Constantinople, Chalcedon, Ephesus, etc. These are our cities, either in the capital or in very close cities in the same area. This means that Orthodox Christianity was built in Constantinople and around Constantinople, and it was built under the supervision of the Roman emperors. And this is one aspect, let's say, one proof of what is called the Symphonia. It means the symphony, the collaboration, a very important type of collaboration between the state and the church. And this is one of the components of Orthodox Christianity, about which we can say one day we can have a conference about this subject. Well, the Romaioi of the Levant were directly involved in the developments that took place during these different periods, and I have chosen here the periods where the Levant were directly concerned by the development of this civilization. With the first period, consecration of Constantinople until 451, the first golden era, the second golden era, then the rise of Russia, the nationalism, communism, and contemporary era. These are let's say the periods in which we were directly concerned, as in the East. The great emperors of the Roman Empire, Constantine the Great, Theodosius I and II, Justinian, Mauritius, Heraclius, etc., included the Levant in the cultural and theological developments. What did they do? They built and renewed Christian cities: Jerusalem, Bethlehem, Damascus, numerous forgotten cities of Seir and Apamia in Syria. The Seir and Apamia are in northern Syria. Monasteries, very important monasteries still until now, still remaining until now: Saint Saba in Palestine, Saint Catherine in Sinai, Saidnaya in Syria, churches, the Nativity, the Resurrection, Saint John Baptist, which has been transformed into a mosque later and called is in Damascus, and it's called now Umayyad Mosque, etc. In all the provinces of the Levant, all these structures, all these churches and monasteries were built by the emperors that I am listing here: Constantine, Theodosius first and second, and mainly Justinian, who was very, very important, one of the most renowned Romanian emperors. During this period also, the law school of Beirut was one of the two major law institutes of the empire. There were only two in the whole empire, two law institutes, one in Constantinople and one in Beirut, and contributed, both of them, and the school of Beirut mainly, contributed largely to the establishment of Codex Justinianus, which remains until now in the West, in the different countries of the West, as a basis of jurisdiction. And in this period also, we had very famous Romanian philosophers, theologians, musicians, and saints were also Levantines. As you know most of them: Saint John Chrysostom, Simeon the Stylite, who lives in the northern Syria, Romanos the melodist, who wrote a lot of what we are using now in the church, in the services, in liturgy. Ephraim the Syrian, John Damascene, Yohanna Dimashqi, John Damascene, Saint Saba, Saint Barbara, and Saint Thecla, etc. Very, very big number of the most important saints, theologians, philosophers, and musicians of the Orthodox Church. What about Jerusalem? Jerusalem that was destroyed by the Romans. We should know that Jerusalem was destroyed by the Roman in the year 70, because in the year 70 there was a Jewish revolution against the Roman occupation. And Roman at that time were pagan. And in the year 132, there was a second revolution by someone called Simon Bar Kokhba. They rebuilt, Jerusalem was rebuilt as a pagan city dedicated after the destruction by the Romans. The Romans themselves rebuilt it as a pagan city dedicated to Jupiter and renamed Aelia Capitolina, not Jerusalem, by the Emperor Hadrian in the first century, and remained a secondary city until the reign of Constantine the Great. So it was not a Christian city, and it was not a Jewish city until the time of Constantine the Great. Jerusalem became, in the first golden era of the Romaioi that I have told you, from between 330 and 451, became the center of the world. Several churches and monasteries were built, became a big center of commerce, a big center of religious pilgrimage. So Jerusalem was renamed Jerusalem by Constantine the Great, and it became a Christian city under the Romaioi between 330 and until the Arab occupation in 635. And in the 6th century, before the Arab occupation, Palestine reached the peak of its population and was multi-ethnic and cosmopolitan. It was second only to Constantinople in terms of population. And some authors say that the number of population of Palestine in that area in the 6th century was never attained later until the 20th century. So it was one of the most important areas of the Roman Empire, and all this because it was, but it contained Jerusalem, and it was the Holy Land. Antioch was one of the largest Romaian megapole. It had more than 500,000 inhabitants and a major center of philosophical and theological schools. However, there was a problem during the Romaian period, during the two first periods I was describing. In this cultural atmosphere, because it was a very important capital, a large population, theological disputes flourished, and major heresies developed and caused important persistent schisms in the church. We are still until now under the consequences of these schisms that took place in that period. The first problem was caused by a priest called Arius in the year 325. This Arianism was banned by the First and Second Ecumenical Councils. Arius was a Christian priest, but he believed that Jesus is not equal to the Father. He is not a complete God. He is, let's say, a semi-God, and he should not be considered equal to the Father. And this Arianism was banned by the First and Second Ecumenical Councils, and Arianism migrated from the Roman Empire to the German populations. Germans became Aryans, and then when they invaded the West, the Western Europe, the western part of the empire, they transported their Arianism in Italy, in France, in Spain, and this has lasted for many centuries. In 430, we had a second schism due to another patriarch this time, Nestorius, and it was he caused a schism and the creation of the Church of the East, what is called now the Assyrian Church, and it exists in Iran and in Iraq, not in Syria, Lebanon, not in what was the Roman Empire. It was outside the Roman Empire. They left the Roman Empire and they went out to Persia and to Iraq. Then in 451, we had a third schism. It was a very important schism also, this one for mono or miaphysism. This one about how if Jesus Christ has two natures or one nature, and this caused the schism of the Syriac Church, Syrian, and the Coptic Church, Akbat, in Egypt. And finally, in 685, there was very important, another schism called the monothelism, and it was at the origin, at the origin of the Maronite Church. The Maronite Church that appeared in 685 was monothelist at that time, and they became Catholic or Chalcedonian later on, after in the second millennium. In the first millennium, the Maronites were monothelist. Well, the Ecumenical Council of Chalcedon in 451 was very important. He brought a catastrophe to the Levant, and I think, and many scholars think, that this catastrophe of 451 was one of the causes that helped the Arabs and the Muslims to occupy the Levant. The cultural cause of the schism was linguistic and ethnic. Why? You see on this map two colors, red and blue. The blue area, this is the eastern part of Syria, the population did not speak very well Greek. They did not understand Greek very well, while they were speaking Aramean or Syriani, Aramean. And these people did have chosen at that time, because of probably of this cultural difference, of this linguistic difference, they have chosen to become the Syriac Church or Monophysite. While on the other part, on the western part of Syria, the Lebanon and Palestine, the population spoke Greek and they were culturally Greek. So they refused to become mono and remained with the Chalcedonian Church, the same religion, or let's say the same sect of Constantinople and of the kings, of the emperors of Constantinople. And that's why the Syriacs call them Melkite. Melkite coming from the word Melk. Melk, it means king. So two separate Christian community developed after this council. In the western parts, a Romanian Chalcedonian Orthodox Church. It means the Rome Orthodox Church until now. This one developed in the western part of Syria. And until now, the Christians of all this area are Roman Orthodox. In the eastern parts, a national Syriac monophysite church called the Jacobite, at that moment Jacobite, but also this is the Syriac church, monophysite church. In the 681, the Sixth Ecumenical Council caused a new schism in the Levant. Why? In 681, at that time, the Levant was under the Arab occupation, and there was no more link, no more political relation, let's say, and easiness of relations between Constantinople and the Levant because of the Arab occupation. So the political and cultural cause of the schism was the proposal of a conciliary dogma by the Roman Emperor Heraclius and the Patriarch Sergius. These two patriarchs, the Patriarch and the Emperor in Constantinople, tried to find a solution, a compromise between the two previous churches, the Roman Orthodox Church and the Syrian Orthodox Church, and they decided to propose something saying that Jesus has two natures, but has one will. One will. Monothelit, it means one will. So this decision was taken in Constantinople. But when the Sixth Ecumenical Council took place in 681, then they banned this dogma. They banned this dogma proposed by Heraclius and Sergius. And so because of this, the Romaioi in all the world became returned to the orthodoxy as it was defined previously. But there was a small community, what you see here on the map in yellow. In this area, the population was completely isolated. They have been they became monothelites because the whole Romans were monothelite prior to this area. But after the Sixth Ecumenical Council, there were no more communication between the Levant and Constantinople, and this population remained monothelite, and these people they gave birth to the Maronite Patriarchate that is remaining now in Lebanon. The Maronite of Lebanon are the people who inherited this creation of the seventh century. Well, my sixth question is the Levant under Islam. It's a very long period, 634 to 920, with the exceptions of a Romaian return between 963 and 1000 AD, the second golden era, and the Crusades between 1095 and 1291, Crusades coming from Western Europe. Well, in 634 to 640, was the Arab Islamic invasion of the Levant, as I told you earlier. What are the origins of Islam? Islam started in the Arabic Peninsula, in the Hijaz, close to the borders of the Roman state, very close to, exactly at the borders of the Roman Empire. Theologically, Islam is inspired by Arianism. I have spoken about this. I said that there was a priest called Arius who did not consider Jesus as equal to the Father. And theologically, Islam is inspired by Arianism and also by two communities that do not exist anymore. These were called the Nazarenes and the Ebionites. These were Jews who were adherent to the Torah, continued to be adherent to the Torah, it means to the law of Moses, but accepted Jesus as the Messiah sent by God without being equal to the Father. They are somehow resembling Arianism. So, what theologically Islam is exactly what I am saying now. Islam recognized Jesus as someone very important. He says that he is a Messiah, but he is not equal to the Father. So Islam was created in this period of heresies and of divisions, of schism in the church. Muslims were welcomed by the Monophysites because the Monophysites thought that they are closer to them than the Chalcedonians. It was an error, but they thought that they were closer to them than the Orthodox and considered only heretics. They were considered only heretics by the Orthodox. If we read the book of St. John Damascene, Source of Knowledge, it states exactly that these Muslims coming from the Jazeera, from the Arab Peninsula, are Christians, but it is a Christian heresy. Between 640 and 1920, there was a succession of invasions and foreign acculturation. I am not going to go in details of this because it's a very, very huge subject. But what happened during this period for the Christians, for the Romaioi of the Levant? It was a multiple periods for intensive Arabization and Islamizations. We had many dynasties of Muslims, Umayyad, Abbasids, Fatimid, Mamluks. Greek was progressively replaced by Arabic, and they applied the dhimmi system. Then during this period, as I said, we had the Crusades, and the Crusades tried to do a Latinization because they came here in the year 1010, 1200 after AD. So the West was Latinized again, and it was under German power. So they tried to bring Latinization to the East, and they were in conflict with the Romaioi of the population, and we suffered a lot from these crusades. Then the Ottomans came after 1516, and they imposed a millet system, which is the dhimmi system, much more elaborated. Under the Ottoman occupation, the Romaioi of the Levant saw their status partially improved. So if I have to compare all the Muslim Islamic periods, Abbasid, Fatimid, Mamluk, etc., and the Ottoman were the best one, the best period between all these, the best group, let's say, the best dynasty for the status of the Romaioi in the Levant and in Anatolia was the Ottomans. So why? Because after 1516, the Romaioi of the Levant were back in contact with the other Romaioi of Asia Minor, with Greece and the Balkan, and with Constantinople, who became Istanbul. They were included in the millet system with the ecumenical patriarch as ethnarch, as responsible of all the millet, of all this population, the Romaian population. And they were allowed again to repair and build new churches, to have schools, etc., things that were forbidden before. During all the period from the Umayyad until the Mamluk, this was forbidden, as you will see now. Why? Because Muslims, when they occupied the area, when they occupied the Levant, they occupied Egypt, they occupied Persia, etc., how did they treat Christians? They created something called the dhimmi system. What is the dhimmi system? It includes the following points: the right to practice religion for the Christians and for Jews also, the right to practice religious rites without disturbing the Muslims, the right to own property and work except in profession reserved for Muslims, such as politics, judiciary, and teachings. It was forbidden for Christians to do politics, or to be judges, or to teach. They have to pay the jizya, poll tax, in exchange for protection, with prohibition of participation in wars against Muslims. There was a prohibition of displaying religious symbols such as the cross and icons, prohibition of displaying Christian clothing, and prohibition of exhibition of places of worship. The places of worship, it means churches must be hidden somewhere. No crosses, no signs, no Christian symbols. Prohibition of audible prayers outside places of worship. Muslims should not hear the prayers of the Christians. Prohibition of ringing church bells. Prohibition of building and repairing churches without Muslim permission. And this permission was never given. We don't have now, if we look on the map of Syria and Lebanon and Palestine, no churches has been built here in these countries between the year 640 and 1516. No churches were built, no monasteries were built during all these periods. Prohibition of proselytism, it means preaching to Muslims. Prohibition of marriage with Muslim women. Prohibition of inheritance from Muslims. And in some Islamic historic periods were very fanatic periods, where the Christians had to wear clothes that identify them as Christians. They cannot ride horses and camels. They have to go to walk on the left of a Muslim in public places. The major consequences of the Arab and Turkish Muslim occupation that lasted about 13 centuries are: one, as to culture, is Arabization and Turcification. The Romaioi of the Levant lost their daily contacts with the Romaian world, no more contacts with Constantinople, no more contacts with Greece, no more contacts with Balkan, no contacts with Russia at that time. Russia was a poor state, but no contacts with them. Constantinople became weak progressively, then was occupied by the Latins and the Turks. The use of the Greek language weakened in the Levant, and finally was confined to church services, as you know. No one now in the population of the Levant speaks Greek. Names and forenames changed to Arabic. At the origin, there were other names. They were either Arameans or Greek, and everything has changed to Arabic. The second phenomenon is Islamization. A large-scale conversions to Islam happened, mainly in the cities of the Levant, because of the dhimmi system that I have described, the prohibition, the multiple prohibitions, and the advantages given to Muslims. Several churches and monasteries were destroyed. Cathedrals and churches of all the cities were transformed into mosques, and Christians did not have schools. So you see, it was an impoverished, a very, very difficult period, and it is really, I can say, it is a miracle if Christians remained in this area during the 13th centuries. Examples of church and monasteries destructions. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre of the Resurrection, Knisset Kem. The Resurrection Church in Jerusalem was destroyed. You don't know this. It was destroyed in 1009 by order of the Fatimid Caliph, who was a very fanatic Caliph, Al-Hakim bi Amrillah, in October 16, 1009. The basilica and the rotunda were heavily damaged, and the edicle, the small shrine covering the tomb, was largely demolished. And the church was subsequently reconstructed and completed in 1048 by the Romaian Emperor Constantine IX Monomachos, who has obtained a permission to do this reconstruction from the son of Al-Hakim bi Amrillah, about, as you see, 30 years later. As churches and monasteries of the forgotten cities is another example, a very, very bad example. If you go to the northern Syria, the area of Apamia, and there are cities that are completely devastated, no more population. They are called the forgotten cities, and there you can find dozens, if I say perhaps 100 church and monasteries completely devastated, and they remain as touristic sites. The seventh question is the Levant under Islam. What happened in the latter 3 centuries? Under the Ottoman rule, the state alliances, now, as I said, the Ottoman rule or the Ottoman period is the best one between all the Muslim periods that passed in the Levant. However, the state alliances between the Turks, it means the Ottoman rulers, and the Franks, France, gave advantages to the Roman Catholic Church. So this is a new phenomenon happening during the last 3 centuries. The latter church tried to infiltrate the Levant by creating in 1622 the Propaganda Fide. The Propaganda Fide is a kind of department in Rome, in the Catholic Church, aiming to preach Christianity and to convert mainly the Eastern Christians, the Christians of the East, of the Levant, of Egypt, of Greece, of the Balkans, to convert them to Catholicism. Consequences of the Propaganda Fide and the alliance with France and the King Francois I was that the holy places in Palestine were put under French protection for about 100 years. The French became responsible of the holy places, of the holy tomb, of the Christian, all the churches of the Nativity, of the Resurrection, and until now, that is, if the Franciscan, it's a monastic group in the Catholic Church who is still there, and they have the title of the guardians of the holy places. The Maronites of Lebanon, who were, as I said earlier, monothelite, became Catholic in the year 1580. And they caused also the very sad schism in the Romaian Orthodox Church, the creation of the Uniate Church, or the Catholics, what they called Rome Catholic, or the Melkite Church in 1724. All these were the consequences of the state alliances between the Turks and the Franks, or between the Ottoman Empire and France. The Romaioi of the Levant also, during these 3 centuries, were deeply affected by the Protestant proselytism, means Protestant preaching, that started earlier in the 19th century. The Catholicism started preaching in the 16th century. Protestant came to our countries in the 19th century. These were missions sent by Prussia, Great Britain, USA, and mainly the most important let's say, organism responsible of this proselytism were the Church Missionary Society in London and the American Board of Commissionaries for Foreign Missions in New England. This is very important, and they caused also a lot of proselytism. They established Protestant communities in the Levant. Another phenomenon happening during the last 3 centuries is the importation of nationalism from the West. Why it was imported? Because they started in the West to have nationalism, French, British, Italian, Spanish, German nationalities. This did not exist during the Middle Ages. It was a creation of the 17th and 18th centuries. It was important to the East, important to our countries, to Eastern Europe and to the Levant, used initially by Great Britain and France to weaken and to fragment the Ottoman Empire. because they wanted, the Ottoman Empire was a big empire, and they wanted to fragment it to small states, and they developed, they helped what is all the the different nationalities. They created the notion of nationality, and then you started to have the Greek nationality, Bulgarian nationality, Serbian nationality, Wallachian nationality, Russian nationality, and Arab nationality, Syrian nationality, etc. All these nationalities were important as concepts, were imported from the West because of this nationalism, and it was adopted. And even many Romaioi who did not have, who do not know, a lot of us in our society here in the Levant, they don't know their history. They don't know the whole heritage we are speaking about, the high legacy we have. They adopted Arab nationalism, Syrian nationalism, and although this was completely different from the Romaian universal concept. Russia played an important role in the defense of the Romaioi of the Levant. How? The Romanov dynasty started helping the Romaioi of the Levant in the 16th century, when the Tsar invited the patriarchs Paisios of Alexandria and Makarios of Antioch to Moscow, and they established links with the Christians, with the Romaioi, Orthodox Romaioi of the Levant. 12 wars between Russia and the Ottoman Empire, and in the majority of wars, Russians were victorious. So Russia succeeded in removing the French protection over the holy places. It was given back to the Orthodox Church. And in the second half of the 19th century, Russia succeeded in softening the dhimmi conditions and started building churches and schools for the Orthodox Romaioi of the Levant. The majority of our cathedrals in the Levant have been built between the 17th century, the 18th, 19th century, and there was a lot of help coming from Russia itself. Well, the current situation of the Romaioi in the Levant, they are scattered, scattered all over Lebanon, the western part of Syria, Jordan, and Palestine. But we are very sorry, we represent only less than 10% of the global population. The population of the Levant became a Muslim population, and the Christians became converted to Islam, or a lot of them left the country, left this area, and went even to Anatolia first, then to Greece, to Cyprus, or to the immigration to America, Australia, and Western Europe. The Romaioi are, and also another problem we are facing is the division of the Romaioi into two religious communities, the Orthodox and the Catholic, because of the Sacra Congregatio, the propaganda fide that I spoke about earlier. This resulted from a very active Western Latin proselytism conducted by Rome. After the Florence Council, there was before 1453 a council that tried to unite the Orthodox and the Catholic Church, and the fall of Constantinople in 1453. So Rome tried after that to preach the Orthodox Church in the East and to transfer them to Catholics. They succeeded in making the Maronites Catholic, and they succeeded in dividing the Romaian Orthodox Church into two churches, Orthodox and Catholics. The schism happened in 1724. At the end of this, the present religious condition of the Romaioi in the Levant, we have two Orthodox patriarchates in Antioch and Jerusalem, and we have one Catholic patriarchate covering Alexandria, Antioch, and Jerusalem. There is 2/3 of the Romaioi of the Levant are Orthodox, 1/3 is Catholic. Finally, in the aim of raising awareness about the conditions of the Levantine Romaioi, we created the Romaian Cultural Society that I preside. You see here the logo of the Romaian Cultural Society, and its name is given in Arabic and in Greek, because we should maintain our link with our historical language, which is the Greek language, and we are citing also the Slavonic language in Russian, the Slavonic language, primary language of Russian and Serbian and Bulgarian, because of the majority of the Orthodox existing in the sphere of the Slavic languages. So Romaian Cultural Society is the unique Romanian association nowadays working in the Levant to revive the Romanian heritage of the Levant and to raise awareness of its cause among the Romanian communities and in the Romanian diaspora. Our aims are four majors. Rediscover the Romanian heritage of the Levant that I was describing this evening, today, to enhance the cultural identity of the Romanians in the Levant, to develop a sense of belonging to the Romanian world, and to repair some concepts and terms used wrongly by scholars and public media, like the words Byzantines. As I said to you, it is not completely wrong. Arab Christians, which is completely wrong because we are not Arabs, we are Canaanites, we are Hebrews, we are Arameans, and we are Greek. We a very minority, a small minority of the population of the Levant is Arab, or the Greek Church, because if you say Greek Church, it means that you are confining the Orthodox Church to one nationality, to one ethnicity, and this is completely wrong because Orthodoxy is an ecumenical or a universal church, not a church confined to one ethnicity. Additional intermediate and long aims of the Romanian Cultural Society to create local educational and social institutions for helping the Romanians to remain in their villages, their cities, and their country, to create bonds with governmental, social, and academic institutions of the Romanian world, papers to diffuse the Romanian culture and news. We are trying to do all this. We are 11 years old now. We have done a lot of things, but a lot of things remain to be done in the future. One thing we have done and we have published during the last 3 years is this very comprehensive book about our culture, about civilization, about our history. It's called Shamsi Lan Taghib, Our Sun Shall Not Fade. We hope to translate this book to English and to publish it in the West because it represents a comprehensive book related to our history and legacy and can teach a lot our diaspora and all the West about our heritage. In brief, the Romaioi of the Levant are the direct heirs of the Romanian Empire. Their revival was miraculous under Arab and Turkish occupations, and despite the political and religious proselytism of the Catholic and Protestant West. Despite our recent efforts, and because of the great challenges we are facing, however, we fear a fate similar to that of the Romaioi of Anatolia. It means of the Christians of Turkey. We have now, there is less than 0.1% of the population of Anatolia remaining Christians. This population was 100% Christian during the first millennium, now remains only 0.1% of the population Christians. It was a catastrophe, and it's still a catastrophe, and we fear to have a fate similar to these Christians. Thank you very much.